Hope the screen is visible to all of you. Okay, so your chapter, your subject name is business regulations. As you can see the picture, right? It deals with law, the Court of India, the Court of India, or the rules and regulations laid down by the Constitution of India. Let's start with the first chapter. First chapter entirely deals with contract law, right? It is called as Indian contract law. Just to give an overview, guys. Now, contract in general, day-to-day lives, we all have involved ourselves into contract. Let's say, for example, you go to a dry cleaning shop, right? You give your clothes for them to clean, and you promise them to pay, right? So you're giving an offer and an acceptance, and they're accepting that they were going to wash your clothes, dry clean your clothes, and then they're going to present it back to you, and you're going to pay them, right? The same thing in another example. Let's say you go to a restaurant, right? And you also they offer you food and you pay for them. Another example, let's say you go to a parking lot, right? Your vehicle is kept there for an hour or 2 hours or so, and they have given you a receipt to make sure that that's your bill, and you need to pay back after an hour or two to pick up the bike, because they're going to take care of your bike for that 1 or 2 hours of time. So these are the day-to-day transactions or day-to-day activities that we involve ourselves, which is nothing else but contract, right? Where there are two parties to it. One is an offer, one is an acceptor, promiser, promisee. So we are going to study these details, guys, in Indian Contract Act, which is established in the year 1872. So various things we'll be studying here, like say, what is a contract? In general, it is an agreement enforceable by law. It is an agreement enforceable by law. Now, there's any agreement between a businessman, one business to another business, right? You're writing down documents. If you can see the picture put up on the PPT, right? The person's asking the other one to read down the conditions laid on the contract or the agreement and put a sign. That means you are agreeing to the conditions, right? So that is talking about the contract. So you'll be studying various aspects like proposal or offer, acceptance, promise, consideration, right? Consideration is nothing but the payment you will be giving in terms of money only. Consideration is always to be in terms of money or liquid cash. There's again classification of contract that you'll be studying, and the breach of contract. The breach of contract is where one of the party happens to back out of the contract. Now let's say you can see the second picture over there. The contract sheet is torn apart from the middle, right? That means to say the contract has been cancelled, or whatever conditions are put up on the contract are not kept, right? Whatever is that you have promised, you're not able to keep it up. Let's say you promised to sell 100 kgs of wheat to a person, and on the day of contract you're telling you will not sell it, right? So that means you're cancelling the contract. You are not adhering to the conditions of the contract. That is called the breach of contract. So according to the Indian Contract Act, there will be some remedies, because the other person has suffered loss because you are backing out of the contract. Therefore you will have to pay certain remedies or penalties for the sake of breaching the contract. Let's look at the second chapter. This is all about the first chapter. Second one, law of sale of goods, right? This entirely speaks about Indian Sale of Goods Act of the year 1930. You can see that act over there. One person is giving the goods, another person is paying for the same. So there is a buyer, there is a seller. Here you'll be studying what are the essentials of contract of sale. So in order to have a contract of sale, what are the basic terms that you need to agree on? What are the conditions? And we also going to study two parties always here are buyer, seller. Now what are the goods here we are talking about? Goods always have to be movable, guys. That's the point here. When I am telling you the Sale of Goods Act, it always have to be movable Goods Act. Now let's say there are conditions in that existing, that means ready to use goods. Then let's say future goods. Now what is this future goods? Now today you've sowed a seed in your farm or an agricultural land. Definitely it's going to take time to grow into a plant and bear a fruit, right? So that is going to be your future goods. Whenever I'm telling you future good, that means I always refer to crops or any agricultural products. The third type is contingent, where you study where may or may not the contract may happen or may not happen. Next, you'll also be studying about the transfer of property. That means every time the good is moving from one person to another person, the ownership also has to change. Then consideration, as I already previously told you, always has to be only in cash. There is nothing called as barter system, guys. Back then there was barter system, exchange of goods for goods. I will sell you 1 kg of wheat, you will give me back 1 kg of ragi. That is not a sale of goods according to the Act of 1930. Under the Sale of Goods Act, your consideration must always be in cash. Now, there is again you will be studying the rights and duties of a buyer, both in terms of buyer as well as a seller. What are the rights you have? What are the duties you have? In case you are not paid, in case you are promising a consideration of rupees 1 lakh, but you have not paid, that means it is unpaid seller. The seller has not received his consideration. That is the meaning of unpaid seller. So what will the rights of the unpaid seller be? So these are the various aspects we will be studying under the second chapter, Indian Sale of Goods Act 1930. Essentials, conditions, rights and duties, types of goods, transfer of property, consideration, rights of unpaid seller, etc. Moving on to the third chapter, it is called Competition and Consumer Laws. Now, let's break this down, guys. Two things. There is Competition Act of 2002 and this Consumer Protection Act of 1986. First one is Competition Act. You can see that picture over there. There are many people participating in the race, but there's only one person who's going to win the medal, one person who's going to win the cup, right? Now here, according to the Competition Act, why is it set up? Is to prohibit restrictive trade practices, or maybe to protect the interest of consumers. You would have seen various things, right? Now, in order to boost up profits, in order to gain money within a very short period of time, you know what businesses do, right? Now let's say for the current lockdown period itself, guys, now there is a sudden demand for sanitizers, there is a sudden demand for masks or all the medical equipments, etc. Now, in order to beat the competition, in order to grab the demand and make the most of the money, there are so many people who have faked or who have given faulty sanitizers, or have given faulty medical equipments, etc. Right? Now, to enable, why this Competition Act is in place is to prohibit restrictive trade practices. Number two, to protect the interest of consumers. It can also be to ensure freedom of trade. Now, I cannot make sure there is only, I'm sure you have come across this company called, I've even mentioned to you in the class, it's called as Walmart. It is one of the biggest retail industry in the Western world, maybe in the US. Now, they also had plans of shifting it to India, because India has a wide variety of consumers and market. So therefore, Walmart had plans to open its stores in India. Now, Indian government had a very strong no about it. Reason being, if that company or Walmart is going to enter India, all the Indian wholesalers, retailers will get affected. Okay, so to make short this example, to avoid monopoly, there should not be just one person ruling in the market where others cannot survive, where others cannot have any share in the business. That will be avoided with the help of Competition Act. To ban monopoly, that is to provide equal opportunity and to promote a healthy competition. Now, let's say what are the terms. Now, there is also under Competition Act, you'll be studying a separate institution called as CCI, right? It is a body corporate Right, CCI stands for Competition Commission of India, CCI. Now what is this institution does? It is a body corporate and an independent entity possessing a common seal with the power to enter into contract and to sue its name. Okay, that's about Competition Act, guys. The second part is consumer protection. Can you see that picture over there where people are being protected under one umbrella, where you can see it's a cartoon image, but in the real sense it is to make sure under the act, that is the Consumer Protection Act 1986, consumers are being protected. Consumers are not being faked with a faulty or a damaged products, especially with the FMCG, that is fast moving consumer goods. Now what is the aim of Consumer Protection Act? Basic thing is to what? To protect. Now you can see the picture that is depicted there is what? People are being protected under that umbrella. Same thing applies to the act, to protect consumers of goods and services from unfair trade practices. You have listened to so many types of news, right? Maggie had lead in its content, or so many other products had some other unclean thing, or the ingredient used is prohibited, etc. So all these things can be brought to the notice of Consumer Protection Act. Now there are various forums. If you find something like this, some product is cheating you or having a falsified default product, you can always approach something called as redressal forums, okay, where you can go and complain. So there is district level forums, there is state level, there is also national level. Now the act defines who is a consumer. One who purchases for self use. Okay, so if I'm purchasing a fruit for myself, if I'm purchasing an apple or any food product for me to consume, for me to eat, then I am the consumer. Now let's say I'm purchasing 10 kgs of rice, not for self use, but I'm reselling it to somebody. Then am I called a consumer? No, I am purchasing for the sake of reselling it. Then I'm not called a consumer. Who's a consumer? A consumer is a person who buys it for self use. Now what are goods here? Again, anything which is movable. It can also, now Consumer Protection Act also applies to, guys, not just goods but also services. Services like what? Banking, insurance, housing, entertainment, lawyer, doctor, professions, etc. Now, what are the unfair trade practices means? Wrong product, default of services, faulty receipt, right? They give you, they ask you to pay for 100 rupees, or maybe they give you a default bill of stating to be 150, right? They're going to include all the unlawful bills or unlawful receipts or expenses without your notice. Restrictive trade practices are forcing or conditional. Now let's say, for example, under Consumer Protection Act, what is a restrictive trade practices? Let's say for example, I need a gas connection, okay, for my home. I need a gas connection, so I go and approach to the company, to the gas agency, and I ask them for a gas connection. They always put up a condition. They say only if you're going to put only if you're going to take a gas stuff from my company, I will give you a gas connection. Now that is what? A conditional sale or a conditional act. That is called restricted trade practices. Of course, the only duty is to give me the gas connection or reject me, that they won't give me. But if they're attaching a condition, that is something called as unfair or restrictive trade practices. That's about the third chapter, competition and consumer. Moving on, chapter 4, you'll be studying again two laws here, economic laws. It speaks about two things here, Indian Patent Act of 1970 and second one, FEMA 1999. Now what is Indian Patent Act? Guys, all of you know there's something called as intellectual property rights, correct? Now what is that intellectual property rights? Like copyright, trademark, industrial design, trade secrets. For example, now if you have own a Coca-Cola company, right? The kind of taste Coke gives, no other drink can give, right? There is a special formula that goes to create that taste of Coke. So that is called a business or a trade secret. Okay, of course that trade secret has to be what? Patented or to be registered. Correct. Now here we are going to talk about particularly patent. Now what is a patent? It is something new that you're creating, invention, processing, a new product. That means granting of an exclusive right for a limited period. Got it? Now, what is the criteria? If you want, let's say you want a patent right. Now, what are the conditions? First thing, it has to be novelty. That means what? Completely new. It must be not known to the public. If you're able to duplicate it, or if you're able to copy somebody, no, then you won't be given a patent rights. It has to be absolutely a new invention. It must also be, remember, your patent, whatever you're giving, must have some applicability. Meaning to say, if you're inventing something that has to be useful for some other area, maybe in an industry, maybe in a household item, or maybe in medical industry, maybe in pharmaceutical, maybe in technological, maybe in automobile industry, somewhere or the other, that patent must have utility or applicability. The second part of the law is FEMA. FEMA stands for, I'm sure all of you know, it's Foreign Exchange Management Act, right? I'm sure it was replaced something called as FERA, Foreign Exchange Regulations Act. If you ask, ma'am, why is the reason that FEMA was replaced by FERA? FERA was a very restrictive, or it had a lot of rules and regulations which was not really helping the business or helping the Indian economy to grow. Okay, that is why they had to reframe a little bit and make the regulations more a lesser burdensome, and then they came up with Foreign Exchange Management Act. Okay, now, it is a set of regulations. What is FEMA? FEMA is a set of regulations that empowers RBI and also enables the government of India to pass rules in what? In relation to foreign exchange with the foreign trade policy of India. So basically, guys, it deals with your import, export of goods. So anything, if you want to import and export, of course you're doing it outside the country. That means there is a currency change. Let's say if it's Japan, you're going to receive yen, or if you're importing, you have to pay them in terms of yen. If it's USA, it's you're going to deal in dollars. If it's Dubai, you're going to deal it at different currencies, right, etc. So this is why FEMA is required. FEMA was replaced to comply with the post-liberalization policy. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this because when I say post-liberalization policy, guys, if you can remember, when did post-liberalization happen? In the year 1991. If you can recall, we all know what does LPG Act stand for: liberalization, privatization, and globalization in the year 1991, right? So when then post liberalization with FERA, it was very challenging for the for the Indian economy to grow economically. So therefore, in the year 1999, finally they came up with FEMA. So any kind of financial transaction that any person, you and me, or any organization or individual wants to deal with foreign securities on exchange, cannot do it without FEMA's permission or without FEMA's knowledge. The last chapter is environment and cyber laws. It's a very interesting chapter. The first part deals with Environment Protection Act. When did it start, or when did it come into force? The aim is to provide for the protection and improvement of environment. So you're going to protect the environment and also make sure you what? Improve the environment. So when did this actually come into force? There was a conference, United Nations conference held on human environment as on June 1972, where our Indian government, right, Indian government of India participated, and then they came into a conclusion that yes, we need to take it as a legal procedure, and so they created an Environment Protection Act. The reason being to prevent hazards to human beings, living creatures, plants, and the property surrounding us. So it basically focuses on everything, not just the soil or not just the land that we are stepping on, but also the water bodies, the atmosphere, that is the air conditions, because we are going to, due to a lot of industrialization, don't we think we are leaving out a lot of poisonous gases into the air? Yes, we have all just recently heard about the news that there's oil spillage on the sea, on the oceans, right? Now all this has to be avoided. Now the only reason why this came up is to avoid deterioration in environmental quality, and because there is a lot of increasing pollution and the poisonous gases in atmosphere. So this is what Environment Protection Act of 1986 deals with. The last part, cyber law. Now guys, this is the most trending, I would say, where people are being easily cheated. You can see those two pictures over there. Another person without our knowledge is able to steal our personal data. It can be bank details, it can be pictures, it can be anything, right? People are able to fool each other across internet or using information technology. So Government of India came up with this act called Information Technology Act. It is commonly called as IT Act. In simple, IT Act 2000. Now what is it? It is a primary law in India dealing with cybercrime and e-commerce. Now it also deals with, guys, when I say e-commerce, now if from Amazon or from Flipkart, if there is a faulty product or they're trying to cheat, all this is what? Governed by the Cyber Law or IT Act. It is applicable to whole of India. Then the act provides a legal framework for e-governance. Now everything that we start, no guys, where Modi ji has started, or make sure your all your documents are scanned, uploaded on a specific site, etc. This e-PDFs or documents that we are able to store, it is all because of this IT Act. That is when it's all started. It enabled government e-governance. That means electronically also I can govern the people's documents by giving recognition to digital signatures. So that is when with the IT Act, something called as digital signature started and e-records started. So if there is any issue that you need to approach to the IT Act, again there's a tribunal called Cyber Appellate Tribunal, CAT. Now this is an institution, just like for, you remember, for Competition Act I told you CCI, Competition Commission of India. Likewise you also have for IT Act Cyber Appellate Tribunal. It is just for the sake of resolving any kind of disputes. So under this act, it defines every kind of cyber crimes, and it also prescribes what penalties, if you're found to be a cyber criminal, what are the penalties you will be paying according to the law of IT Act 2000. Okay, so these are the 5 different chapters that you'll be studying. I'll just rush through. Okay, remember how many acts you're going to be studying, guys. Indian Contract Act, Sale of Goods Act, Competition Act, Consumer Protection Act, Patent Act, FEMA, Environment, and Cyber Law Act or IT Act. So in total you will be studying 8 different laws.